It's Tuesday, July 25th. This is Africa 54. Wildfires have killed 34 in Algeria as a major heatwave sweeps across North African countries. As the Nelson Mandela Fellowship concludes next week, yearly fellows reflect on their time spent in Washington, D.C. and lessons learned. And the World Health Organization says there are wide disparities in the health status. A community health expert talks to Lino Mudu about health disparities in Sierra Leone. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. The death toll from wildfires, which continue to rage in northern Algeria, has risen to at least 34, including 10 soldiers, according to the Interior Ministry. The ministry says some 8,000 people are working to battle the blazes across multiple provinces, supported by over 500 fire trucks and several firefighting helicopters. Nearly 100 fires have been reported in forests across the country. The fire started in the northern provinces of Bejala, Jijel and Bwira, but quickly spread due to strong winds. Wildfires are also burning in Tunisia, sweeping across the town of Tabarka on Monday and in the early hours of Tuesday. Wildfires also swept through the border town of Meloula. Witnesses say fires that had begun in mountainous areas had reached some homes in the town and forced hundreds of families to flee. A civil protection official says they had evacuated hundreds of Meloula's residents by land and by sea in fishermen's boats and Coast Guard vessels. 5 bodies of sub-Saharan migrants have been recovered in a desolate area near the border between Libya and Tunisia, according to Libya's Interior Ministry. Flora Bradley-Watson has the details.
The bodies of 5 migrants were recovered in a desolate area near the border between Libya and Tunisia. Libyan authorities said on Monday they made the grim discovery during border patrols. Dozens of sub-Saharan migrants have been stranded in the area for weeks after Tunisian authorities rounded them up and moved them there from the port city of Sfax. The migrants say the conditions are dire at the border, with no access to food, drinking water or shelter from the heat.
We are suffering here brutally. Look at our skin have been infected.
This migrant from Nigeria wants United Nations to step in.
No food, no water. They materialize us here, they brutalize us, there are snakes here, nowhere to sleep, nothing to eat. We are begging on the new end to please come to our aid.
Thousands of undocumented African migrants have flocked to Sfax, Tunisia's economic capital, with the goal of setting off for Europe in boats. Tunisia's decision to relocate them to the border followed days of violence between residents and migrants, during which one Tunisian man was killed. The Tunisian government later moved them to shelters in 2 towns, but rights groups said that dozens are still stuck at the border. Europe is also putting pressure on Tunisia to stop large numbers of people departing from its coasts. The country signed an agreement last week with the European Union, pledging to crack down on human traffickers in return for more than $1 billion worth of aid.
Flora Bradley-Watson of Reuters filed that report. Hate speech in the Democratic Republic of Congo is reaching unprecedented levels and is spreading through various layers of Congolese society. The hate ideology is exacerbating violence and insecurity in the country, despite several warnings by the UN Office of Genocide Prevention. On July 20th, a member of the DRC National Assembly and former Minister Justin Bitakwira was summoned by the Superior Court to comment on remarks he made earlier saying, quote, "When you see a Tutsi, he is a criminal." To discuss this situation, I'm joined live via Skype from Cambridge, Massachusetts by Boyana Coulibaly, a researcher on the language of conflict and atrocity prevention at Harvard University. Boyana, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Now, first, your reaction to former Minister Justin Bitakwira's remarks on Tutsis and how this might influence conflict in DRC.
Yes, the hate speech we observed today in DRC, like the one performed by Justin Bitakwira, who references Charles Onana, who is himself a notorious hate speech actor and genocide ideologue, is in fact a manifestation of a mental holdup, a mental intoxication by a hate ideology based on erroneous colonial scientific racism and conspiracy theories that divided Africans into several racial categories. And these conspiracy theories of the Tutsi invader or Tutsi criminal we hear in Bitakwira's statement has spread throughout the Congolese society. It's been amplified by civil society groups. It's been amplified by Congolese public officials like Bitakwira, but also by the members of the diaspora who promote that genocide denial or genocide ideology. And it's been used for political endorsement in DRC, thus preventing conflict resolution. And they directly target Congolese communities, pushing them to exile or at risk of atrocity crimes.
Boyana, it's also alleged that Bitakwira used disparaging remarks to describe Yoweri Museveni, the president of Uganda, and also Kenya's President William Ruto. Can that damage relations between DRC and those neighboring countries?
So based on these false theories of racial division and physical morphological categorizations, each political regional group or entity will be classified along those racial lines where we either partner or define them as enemies. So going from hate speech and incitement to violence, we end with incitement to war. Kenya, being one of the solutions that came to serve as a neutral participant in the peace process, becomes here designated as a type of enemy created in the imaginary and seen as belonging to the other, whose sole purpose in that imaginary is seen as being to invade DRC, like Rwanda, for example.
Now, as a researcher on conflict prevention, what do you think might be the way forward to prevent conflict in DRC and implement lasting solutions?
So these types of division-driving utterances, hate speech, and racist conspiracy theories prevent the peace effort. These are root causes of the conflict that are being ignored. So no one is being held accountable for hate speech and incitement to violence in DRC. In fact, this hate ideology has been provided safe haven in the Congo 3 decades ago and has led to the genocide ideological contamination where over 260 armed groups operate today, particularly the remnants of the genocidal force from the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, namely the FDLR Nyatura armed group. So one way the first step would be to solve this hate speech or hate ideology issue by, number one, bringing to justice those who are responsible, those actors of hate speech and hate violence, and also thinking about the refugees who have been exiled, who are still internally displaced due to this hate ideology, which is pushing them away or bringing them to the level of being victims of possible atrocity crimes. One example is the Bahema population in Ituri, which has been victim of this genocide ideology since 2017 by the Lendu-led armed group Codeco.
Right. Boyana, thank you very much for your insight into this. Boyana Coulibaly is a researcher on the language of conflict and atrocity prevention at Harvard University. Since fighting between rival generals began on April 15th, millions of Sudanese have fled northeast from Khartoum to the city of Atbara. Sid Ahmed Ibrahim has this story narrated by Salem Solomon.
The city of Atbara is about 350 kilometers northeast of Sudan's capital, Khartoum. Today, Atbara is hosting people from Khartoum and elsewhere who've been displaced by the fighting between two rival generals that began in April. Some refugees choose to stay in Atbara and others use it as transit hub to Port Sudan or the neighboring country of Egypt. Community members like Yusuf Hassan have set up an emergency station that provides shelter and other basic needs.
We focused on the issue of providing housing for the displaced, and we were able to house a large number of people fleeing the hell of the Khartoum war in the city of Atbara. They were housed in schools, homes, and guest houses, and the number of shelter centers in Atbara has reached 45 since beginning of the war.
Hassan says most of the work is done by volunteers like himself.
We work without receiving any government assistance. Most of the aid comes to us from philanthropists and the youth from neighborhoods active in volunteer work.
The volunteers say they are facing supply shortages. The UN says that as of July 14, more than 3 million people have been displaced because of the conflict, including 2.4 million within Sudan. Sharaf Al-Wad fled Khartoum and says the people in Atbara have been welcoming.
When we arrived to Atbara, people was very, the hospitality of people of Atbara was great. They received us, we stayed at houses, places. They provide us food, accommodation, and all the necessary requirement that for our own safety. But we still have a lots of gaps that need to be filled in medication, in food supply, in accommodation also.
Despite the difficulties Atbara faces in providing adequate support, it continues to host refugees. But activists say they need help and are appealing to international and other organizations for aid. For Saeed Ahmed Ibrahim in Atbara, Sudan, Salam Solomon, VOA News.
The Young African Leaders Initiative through the Nelson Mandela Fellowship is soon concluding. The Yali Fellows are now reflecting on their time in Washington and some of the lessons they have learned and how they are planning to implement those once they return to Africa. VOA's Anthony Labruto has more.
Members of the Young African Leaders Initiative through the Nelson Mandela Fellowship have had a packed 6-week schedule during their time in Washington. They've participated in lectures, worked on developing solutions to challenges in their home countries, but most importantly, they're doing acts of community service. Since 2014, Nelson Mandela Fellows have given more than 67,000 hours of community service to organizations across the United States. For Isaac Pomboloka, a Yali member from Zambia, seeing how different digital health organizations operate in the U.S. has given him an inspirational challenge on the way to his own research and influencing back home.
And I've gotten this exposure to learn how people are able to execute things at the highest precision possible. And it's because of that exposure, and it is pushing me to see how best I can also go back in Africa and be able to contribute towards strengthening our own economical and social institutions.
Diana Twikpe, a public health consultant, is seeing how involved people can be in community service in Washington and gives her the inspiration to continue community service work back home in Ghana.
The act of service from the people here, their hearts of kindness, and most importantly, the fact that we decide to sit down and remember Mandela's work. I think I can go back to my country and tell them that, hey guys, it's good we also decide to come together and appreciate Mandela and also see how best we could see to get involved in the community during this period.
David Orkior, a medical doctor in rural Uganda, tells me that building resilience is a top priority for him when he returns home.
So when I go back to my country, I believe I am going to do exactly what I'm doing here. I need to go back and serve my communities, specifically the rural communities. And this service means you have to stick in there. Whatever challenges you have, work with your communities and ensure that you come out of them.
The Washington-based Yali members will host other American-based Yali groups for the Mandela Washington Fellowship Summit from July 31st to August 2nd. Anthony Labruto, VOA News, Washington.
Elon Musk is unveiling a new logo to replace Twitter's famous Bluebird as he rebrands the social media giant he bought last year for $44 billion. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
Workers removed the old Twitter logo and lettering on the facade of the company's headquarters in San Francisco, California, after Elon Musk decided to make a major change. He is replacing the widely recognized Bluebird with a white X, as the tycoon accelerates his efforts to transform the social media platform. Musk and the company's new chief executive, Linda Yaccarino, announced the rebranding Sunday, scrapping one of technology's most iconic logos since he took over Twitter 9 months ago. Adedoyin Adedeje, a tech analyst in Lagos, Nigeria, says this has been a long time coming.
He's one of those few people, especially in tech and innovation and creativity, that I do follow their story over time. So, and I think for those that follow his story, you would know he has always said something like this over time.
Musk's connection to the letter X goes back to more than 24 years when he founded X.com.
He had always talked about an idea for an app called X, and everything app. Okay, so when he bought Twitter, I think it was one of those things I said that he would likely want to convert Twitter into a social media / commerce platform. So, and I think the first major step towards that is what he has done by renaming the platform from Twitter to X.
Rebranding is yet another change that Musk has made since acquiring Twitter. That has alienated users and turned off advertisers.
He hasn't done well with Twitter in the last month since he acquired it. That's my own personal opinion. In terms of features, in terms of some of the policies he has put in place, they are not very popular features. For example, limiting of tweets and trying to over-commercialize social media.
Meanwhile, Meta, the parent company of Twitter's rival Facebook, this month launched its text-based platform, Threads, which has up to 150 million users, according to some estimates. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, U.S. President Joe Biden establishes a national monument to honor a slain black teenager. Stay with us.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, the second Russia-Africa summit begins on Thursday as African leaders prepare to meet their Russian counterparts in St. Petersburg. We'll look at how much Russia really invests in Africa. Can a country at war, facing over 300 sanctions with a stagnating economic footprint in Africa, really be a reliable, promising trade and investment partner to the continent? Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa as we discuss the Russia-Africa Summit.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In other news, the U.S. Treasury Department is imposing sanctions on 3 Malian officials, the Minister of Defense, the Air Force Chief of Staff, and the Air Force Deputy Chief of Staff, accusing them of facilitating the deployment and expansion of the Russian Wagner Group's activities in the West African country. Police and transport authorities say 2 buses collided Tuesday at the entrance of South African University, injuring at least 77 people. 2 of them seriously. One of the buses was a university vehicle carrying students between campuses at the University of Johannesburg. The other was a city bus. And all Africa teams playing at the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup, co-hosted by Australia and New Zealand, failed to secure victory in their opening matches of the global football tournament. Morocco, South Africa, and Zambia all lost, and Nigeria drew 0-0 to Canada. U.S. President Joe Biden is establishing a national monument Tuesday for the black teenager from Chicago who was abducted, tortured, and killed in 1955 after he was accused of whistling at a white woman in the southern state of Mississippi. President Biden is signing a proclamation that will create the Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley National Monument across 3 sites in Illinois and Mississippi. The monument will protect places that are central to the story of Till's life and death at age 14, the acquittal of his white killers, and his mother's activism. One of the locations includes the Roberts Temple Church of God in Christ in Chicago, Illinois, where Till's funeral service was held. Taiba Hatimi studied and practiced dentistry for 7 years before she realized her real passion was caring for the environment. Since then, she has founded a garbage collection app that helps people in Mombasa, Kenya, to reduce garbage along the coast. Saida Swale has the story.
Old Town in Mombasa, Kenya.
And as old as these streets are, the drainage and garbage collection system are just as ancient. But that might be changing thanks to these garbage collection points. This cart pulls up outside Saida Swale's door.
I get from the ceremonies, any ceremonies or outside, which I see a good plastic or bad plastic, I get it. If I have that hard plastic, which is not used anymore, I collect them.
The sacks are then taken to a small collection point where they are sorted and weighed. Swale then receives a small cash incentive for a job well done.
Most women take their plastic to Baustaka because we benefit from them, which we buy their food.
Taiba Hatmi is the brain behind this drive. A dentist by training, she is the co-founder of the garbage collection app known as Baustaka.
The main feature of the Baustaka app is the plastic segregation and trading. You segregate, you accumulate points that can be redeemed for health services, because from low-income communities, the major challenge is they don't have the funds to pay for outpatient services.
The app can also help locals report and stop some low-cost garbage collection services that illegally dump garbage in alleys across Mombasa County. Rahim Watsahu is the Baustaka Community Marketing Officer.
Another important feature of the Baustaka mobile application is that you are able to report illegal dumping. We want the community to take action by themselves.
And Baustaka has been able to fill the gap, says Rahab Nderu of the Lotus Hotel.
What Baustaka has done is it has been able to build that bridge so that we are actually having collectors, we are having community members, we are having companies be able to come together and actually manage the whole plastic waste pollution problem that we are having as Mombasa residents.
Hatimi and others hope to give the coastal city its dignity back.
My dream is to have the recycling infrastructure set up in Mombasa, to have a recycling plant, waste to energy set up in Mombasa, so that the waste can actually be changed into energy.
A dream, but one step closer, thanks to the work of people like Taiba Hatmi. Saida Swale for VOA News, Mombasa, Kenya.
It's time for our health segment, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with the latest information on medical disparities. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Esther. The World Health Organization says there are wide disparities in the health status of different social groups in all countries, whether they are low, middle, or high income. The lower an individual's socioeconomic position, the higher the risk of poor health. The WHO says 87% of premature deaths due to non-communicable diseases occur in low and middle income countries. In the United States, one woman aims to reduce health disparities in her native country of Sierra Leone by helping to increase access to quality health care in a rural community. Joining me in the studio is Linda Moxon-Cissé, the CEO of the Community Health Foundation. Linda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ms.
Lino.
Miss Lino. Sorry, thank you so much.
Listen, health disparities is a very big problem, especially when you get in the rural area. There are places where there is no infrastructure at all, and it's something you have decided to tackle. First and foremost, when dealing with a community where there is nothing, what is the most important need where someone should start, where you started?
Thank you very much for this question. Growing up in Sierra Leone, I saw the desperate need to improve healthcare, especially on the maternal and child health. And considering the area where I came from is in the rural area, it's almost impossible to access quality healthcare. So it's what, the area where I came from, the only hospital that is close by is like 3 hours drive. Oh, wow. Yes, and through rough roads. Sometimes it's even impossible to cross. Like the vehicle gets stuck on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when women are into labor, trying to give birth, sometimes they cannot give natural birth. They have to do like a C-section, meaning a cesarean section, to remove the baby when the woman is not able to give natural birth. So they have to take them to that hospital. The vehicle gets stuck on the road. They are not able to get there, and they die on the road. We lost the mother and the
And the baby.
And the baby.
3 hours is a long time. So
Yes.
where did you start then when you saw the situation and it spoke to you growing up? Where did you start when you wanted to tackle that?
So when I came to US, I was fortunate enough to go to school and get my education in the healthcare. So I decided to form an organization called Community Health Foundation. It's a charity organization registered here in United States, Maryland, and also in Sierra Leone. I registered there also as a charity organization. So I started seeking for medical equipment and supply through, in this country, I started getting donations of ICU beds and medical supplies. I shipped them to Sierra Leone also as a donation to the Ministry of Health. So I started donating medical consumables in the country. That's how I started until 2022. That's last year. Yeah.
COVID and everything.
Exactly. So I established my own hospital with my team, together with my team. That is a maternal and child health hospital equipped with 30-bed capacity. Since then, with my partnership with the government of Sierra Leone through the Ministry of Health and Sanitation, they do provide doctors. Most of them are from Nigeria and some in the country and some medical practitioners.
So you followed a model. You started with a foundation, now you have a hospital, and one of the programs that you are implementing is helping lactating mothers and baby. This week is World Breastfeeding Week. What sort of needs does a mother who just gave birth and is breastfeeding need, and what are you addressing?
So because of, like I said, the lack of health care, so we are providing free health care to lactating mothers, pregnant women, and children who are under the age of 5. So thinking about the lactating mothers, it's really important that we're providing that health care to them, even that free health care, because most of them cannot afford to even buy prenatal vitamins because they don't have the money. So us giving them free health care, even during pregnancy, and after the pregnancy, we continue with them, we follow up with them, we give them prenatal vitamins, we teach them how to breastfeed their baby, we teach them the importance of breastfeeding, because, it makes the baby healthy, and we give them like vitamins that will keep them healthy, and if one of them is like iron. It's very, very important during the baby, and folic acid. It's very important for the baby's brain growth and all that. So we make sure that we provide that free healthcare to them because they are not able to provide. So it's helped them continue to breastfeed.
So before we wrap, if someone wants to follow what you did, wants to help in fighting health disparities in the communities, what is your advice? Where should they start?
It's a good question. Yeah, it's always good to help humanity. Like I started my own through the non-profit foundation, and I also encourage them to do the same or partner with for us that are people who are already existing for like my organization. We are open to partnership. We encourage people who are coming in to partner with us so we can continue to do our work.
We have to leave it there, Linda. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Linda Maxon-Sese. She's the CEO of the Community Health Foundation. And that's our health report for today. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you, Lino.